Okay, we go.
What's going on, family? I hope everybody's well today. I certainly want to appreciate you for logging on and being a part of the Hope TV again. Your support has been absolutely incredible over the past couple of weeks. We want to bring just some quality programming, something to be empowering for our media community, and it's just kind of blossomed, and now people all over the world have been impacted by it. And I want to thank you for your support, all of your messages and your emails. We really tried to just lighten your load and bring some smiles and some sunshine in a very dark time. And I hope you've really been empowered by it. We really believe that God has made us in his image. And being in the image of God, that means we're both spirit, we're soul, and we're body. And that's a holistic approach. And so we've been trying to bring you programming every day that will encourage and feed our spirits. We're also doing a lot in terms of nutrition and diet because we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves physically and putting necessary precautions in place during this time of pandemic. And we also want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves mentally and emotionally. We've heard a whole lot. We've had a lot of therapists to come and share with us the past couple of weeks about the importance of maintaining good mental and emotional health during this time of pandemic. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this to shift the globe in over 100 years. And if you're not careful, you can very easily absorb what you've been observing. And so how do we navigate these turbulent waters without those waters getting inside of us? So I hope you've been encouraged by the therapists that we have coming on. A lot has transpired in terms of our own local church. We've had 20 cases of COVID-19, 20 diagnosed cases there. We've had 8 people who've been in medically induced comas since the last time we've spoken. And we certainly were grateful that many of them are recuperating now and some are still hospitalized now. And our prayers and our thoughts and our love goes out to them during a very trying time. Even those who are watching now, those who have said they'd be tuning in. We've had 4 deaths that have just been difficult. One of our musicians, Justin Gilbert, whose father was a respiratory therapist who passed away and was funeralized on Saturday, giving his life trying to help others and was able to succumb to the disease and the virus. And so a lot has been going on, and we just want to encourage those of you who are watching. We've had about 15 bishops within the Church of God in Christ who've all passed away due to COVID-19. Another friend, colleague here in Atlanta, who just got out of the hospital on Saturday, whose mother-in-law passed away from COVID, and he was diagnosed with COVID and was in ICU for 10 days. And I want to shout out Dr. Carter, Dr. Jonathan Carter. Thank God for his recuperation, and he's back with us. So a whole lot has been going on, guys, and we just got to try to maintain our sanity and get through this as best we can, but believe by faith that things will get better and that every storm does have an expiration date. So I hope you're encouraged, hope you're inspired, and thousands upon thousands, literally tens of thousands of people are viewing every time we put a broadcast on. I want to thank you for your support. And if you've been empowered or impacted, why don't you consider liking the page or sending the links to someone who you know can also be helped by it as well. This is our very important, very segment. We're talking about financial freedom, and we've been blessed and encouraged by some incredible thinkers. We had Dr. DeForest Soares, who is the founder of the D-Free program for African American churches and faith-based organizations. It's kind of blossomed from a mission there in New Jersey to a nationwide movement helping African American people to get out of debt. And this has been very powerful. And a plethora of others who've shared on this platform for the past couple of weeks. But today we're very excited because we do know, what I do believe is God is not allowing us to go through this and us to come out the same. And maybe one of the blessings of the pandemic is it gives us time to reevaluate and reflect And I believe that while we have this downtime, there's some things we have to do holistically, not just spiritually, not just physically, not just emotionally or educationally, but even so financially. A lot of people have been impacted by it, and the questions have been asked: what do we do during this season? How do we equip ourselves or posture ourselves for better once the COVID-19 scare and once the pandemic is over? So what do we do? And so to that end, we have three amazing, incredible people who are going to be sharing with us today. They're professionals in their own right, who've done a whole lot, who have a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight that they're going to offer us today. So if you're very interested, if you're a business owner, or if you've been affected or impacted, or have any type of fiscal or financial goals or desires that you want to see come out of this, please send the link. If you're a business owner or you're considering going into business, please make sure you call lottie-dottie everybody, your friends, your relatives, and your neighbors, and let them know right now that financial freedom is of the Hope TV is on the airways. And to that end, let me go ahead and introduce our guests for today. They're going to share with us. I'm just going to query them and let them just share with us the wealth of knowledge they have. And so we're excited, number one, have with us a young lady who worked as a CPA in the Price Waterhouse Cooper CPA firm, one of the leading CPA firms in the country, and did a whole lot in the area of development and planning, and now has her own state farm agency and has been the top 5 in her region for several years right now. And she's going to help us to really get our hands around this whole thing in terms of insurance. We're so happy to have Natalie Reed. Hello, Natalie. How are you?
Good, and you? Thank you, Bishop. Thank you.
Happy to have you here with us and look forward to talking to you more today. And I really appreciate you sharing with us. Thanks for the opportunity. And of course, and secondly, we have with us Sister Sybil Slade. And Sybil is an amazing woman. She serves as a senior manager in the Federal Reserve Bank here in Atlanta for many years. She's been in the finance industry and the investment industry. She served almost 20 years in this whole area of finance. And now she serves as in the Life Plan Financial Advisory Group. And she's going to be here to help us to understand what's happening in this whole area of investing. Unfortunately, many of us, we look at investments and insurance too often in our communities. We look at GoFundMe as our insurance and our investment plans. And so we want to get some strategies and some insight from somebody who can help us. Sybil, welcome. Thank you for being a part today. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being a part today.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here. And then last but certainly not least, this guy is special, not because he's the only male on the panel today, but he's special because he's a fellow Morehouse grad. And you know, you can tell a Morehouse guy, but you can't tell him much. And I'm so thankful for him. My Morehouse brother, he's on here, and excited to have him on here. He's a graduate of Morehouse College, went on to Emory School of Law, where he received his Juris Doctorate and has been practicing law at a very high corporate level and a business level for over 15 years. He served in a wide array of positions in the area of law and in the business field. And presently he serves as the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of Steve Harvey Global Enterprises. And so there's a whole lot involved in that process. And we're so excited to have him with us, Brandon Williams. What's up, my Morehouse brother? How are you?
How are you, sir? Glad to be here. Hello, everybody.
Glad to have you today. I'm going to start with you, Brandon, since I think you're going to help us to lay some foundation today. There are a lot of people who are watching right now, and we've heard this whole lot of things about entrepreneurship, the benefits of it versus the lack thereof. I've spoken to a lot of people who are trying to figure out what do we do in this season in terms of bettering ourselves from a business or fiscal position. So what kind of advice would you give to people who are considering starting a business? Is it a bad time to begin business? What is your position on this conversation?
Sure. I think that the first thing that I would say, it's never a bad time to start a business. If you have an idea or you have something that's in your gut, your spirit, or a calling that you have that you think you need to start a business, now's the time, right? There is never going to be a perfect time to start a business. And so as you start thinking about that, you've got time to research, you've got time to develop, you've got time to do pretty much anything during now. When will you ever in a lifetime have a moment, notwithstanding the circumstances, but when will you ever have a moment where for 24 hours you're being told to stay inside, read, watch, rest, do anything that everyone begs for themselves to be able to do. So you can read everything about a business. You can try different things. The internet is available. So I think it's a perfect time for a business, because when we come out of this, everyone is going to be clamoring for things to get done. I saw something, Pastor, recently where like 10 of the biggest businesses that exist today started in the deepest recession, whether it was Uber or some of the other platforms, that when people were seemingly down without money, without all these items, businesses got started. What they will always say is necessity is the mother of invention. So right now, you're going to realize, like, what are the things that are going to be important to the world once COVID is over? So decide that now, research right now, find out what is missing in the world, whether it be from a healthcare standpoint, whether it be from just basic necessities standpoint. And this is the time to develop that idea and to develop your business. So I think it's a perfect time, quite frankly.
That's incredible. I look forward to asking you a lot more questions on that. Thanks for sharing that. I want to go right to you for a moment, Natalie. I think this is very relevant for us right now, particularly as a pastor and dealing with death everywhere. And unfortunately, in our community too often, we don't necessarily prepare for death. Sometimes we hate to think about our own mortality, and people right now are having to bury loved ones again, or just the thought thereof in terms of how they navigate through it. So I want to talk about it because I know a lot of people don't have, they're afraid of disposable income or not investing in different things. But what can we do in terms from an insurance perspective, even in terms of planning, to help provide some protection for our families and those that we love, maybe even creating some wealth through insurance? What would your advice? What is your posture to our community and those who are watching at this time?
Okay, thank you, Bishop. I think that, like you said, to your point, most people are afraid of talking about life insurance, right? But with this whole COVID-19, all these unexpected deaths, a lot of people were unprepared. And even now, as I'm talking to all of my policyholders, as I'm doing their reviews, if I don't see that they have life insurance with me, I'm asking, where do you have it? Let me at least document it, because when you pass away and your family start to cancel all your insurance, your car insurance, let me at least say, hey, they don't have it here, but they have it with this company. But I'll tell you that people usually only look at life insurance as only my beneficiary is going to get money when I die. But I'll tell you, the policy holders that I have written, I guess, in the last couple of years, life insurance played an actual key role for them during this whole COVID-19. I have business owners that had permanent life insurance policies that had thousands of dollars of cash value. When they lost customers or they lost income due to COVID-19, I was able to send out checks to them, $9,800, $6,000, $3,000. So life insurance didn't just show up for them in case of a death, but it showed up for them in a time where they needed cash. And there was no questions asked, no credit checks, no income verifications. I was able to send out checks to kind of get them through this reprieve. So now I think more than ever, even if you put up a GoFundMe, people ain't got it to fund the GoFundMe because everybody's trying to hold on to their money. But you can get life insurance now for $16 a month and upwards of $100. It just depends on the policy. But my suggestion is, if you don't have it, take a look at getting it, right? Because we don't know how, even if you survive COVID, we don't know how it's going to impact your health. And we don't even know if you're going to be insurable after that, right? So if you don't have it, if you don't want to call me, call some agent, some insurance agent that can help you. I suggest you get a life insurance plan in place. And I suggest also looking at a permanent policy that offers cash value, so you'll have a death as well as a living benefit.
Thanks so much. That's powerful. Sybil, you work in this area of investment, and unfortunately, many of us, that's so much in terms of institutional racism and investments that we work so hard to get our monies that sometimes we don't hold on to it. But one of the things I believe has happened during this time in terms of this whole economic disruption is that so many stocks have dropped, and a lot of people right now who've been fearful in terms not just of insurance but investing. What would your advice be to people right now? Because I'm looking at stocks of going below $10. I mean, and And so what kind of advice would you give to the average person, those who maybe not white collar, but who have some disposable income? How would you introduce them to this whole field of investing?
That's a great question. Thank you, Pastor. Actually, I have been doing quite a bit of that since the beginning of COVID-19 because I know that there's opportunity when the investments are going down, or the price of investment. So really, I talk to them about, think of it as you're going to Vegas today, Vegas money. If you got on a plane today, how much would you really take to Vegas to gamble with? And in this case, instead, let's look at what's in the market and let's see what's sustainable or defensive. So when I say that, we're looking for things that we know we will use when COVID-19 is over. So whether that's health and beauty goods, whether that's household goods, those are things that we will be using. I also tell them to slowly drip into the market. Do not just go and take the whole Vegas money wallet with you and dump it into the market on one given day. Take your time and drip over several days, several weeks, because we don't know if we've truly hit the bottom of the market. And so I would hate for you to put all your money into the market today and 2 weeks later find out that that stock is cheaper. Then secondly, also make sure there's true value in the stock, that there is not a fire sale. So when I say that, you go back to look at the prospectus on the stock, and you look at the history of the value over the last 5 years, 10 years, etc., and make sure that there is still true value in the stock and it's not a fire sale.
Well, I'm going to come back and ask some questions about that. Brandon, I want to hit you right quick with this question in terms of people who are watching right now. When you talk about starting a business or getting started, sometimes people are intimidated because they've heard about a corporation. Is it an S corp? It's a C corp? It's an LLC? A sole proprietorship. What kind of basic advice would you give to a person now who's sitting home with an idea of how do you get started in terms of beginning a business, a legal business, in terms of having it registered, et cetera?
Sure. So obviously, registering companies is a kind of a state law, or for countries or a particular thing. So it's different in every state. But what I would say, Pastor, is I think if you have an idea where you are deciding that you are going to sell something to the public, you should form a business. There are a lot of people that are operating sole proprietorships. And quite frankly, I mean, money is obviously a thing that matters right now. But take, for example, in Georgia, it costs $100 to set up a company. Now, I'm not saying that $100 isn't a lot of money to certain people right now, but people are spending $100. So if you've got an idea that you love and protect and that you want to take to the market, isn't it worth $100, right? So the reason you want to do it, I kind of have ideas about what I tell people all the time. And when I would have people come to my office and meet with me about why you start a business, the biggest one is limited liability. And that's an intimidating big word to people, but at its core, quite frankly, it's if you operate as a sole proprietor. So let's say, for instance, you own a trucking business today, and it's under Brandon Williams sole proprietorship. That's not been registered. It's just operating. You go out, you've got some truckers that work for you. And let's say that trucker goes and runs over someone, while they're in a route. So they're working for Amazon. You've got a contract with Amazon. They run over someone. And so as that happens, if the person who's been run over or hit, they can sue you, right? And the problem is that it's your personal assets that are at stake if you're not a company, right? So if you have $50,000 in whatever, life insurance, anything that you've got set up, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, certain of those things could potentially be at risk. Those that aren't protected by the federal government, your pension and that kind of thing are protected. But if it's not protecting, it's your cash in your bank account, someone could come after your personal assets. So limited liability is one of the biggest ones. There are a variety of other, I got 7 that I think about. But the biggest one that I would say is limited liability, because you're trying to right now protect every cent that you have. So if you put at issue or put at risk any of your personal assets, that's what you're up against. So I tell people all the time, the biggest reason is limited liability. In terms of the type of company, so you've got a corporation, you've got an LLC, which is limited liability company, you've got a partnership. So you've got all these different entities, but at the end of the day, what each of them are set up for outside of a sole proprietorship is limited liability. No matter what the jurisdiction is, no matter where it is, the biggest thing that you are benefiting from is limited liability.
Wow, that's absolutely so necessary, and I think I like how you put it in such practical terms because people are so. I mean, we talk about $100 in terms of your future and everything that you have is very important. Now, I want to ask you a question in terms of
Sure.
this insurance piece. Um, I'm seeing that a lot of banks and a lot of industries, and maybe Sybil can help too, are making some concessions in terms of people, in terms of price structures. I was even told that State Farm is now offering discounts. So my question is twofold. Um, what kind of policies are being offered now? You mentioned it earlier about cash value, but I'm told that certain companies have policies that will provide people with some type of critical care components now. They need to pull some money down now, so it just doesn't benefit, uh, their loved ones in the case they transition. So I want to ask two questions: what kind of companies are offering discounts in terms of insurance, and number two, what kind of policies can people benefit from critical care policies now through your company or other policies, other corporations?
So to answer your first question, State Farm did announce last Friday on Good Friday that they were giving back $2 billion in dividend credits to our mutual auto policy owners. And so most people don't know, but State Farm is owned by the mutual policy owners. So basically, mutual would be good driving record, good credit. Most people don't know your insurance is also based on your credit. So that's another thing that I know there's someone on the call talking about it, but your credit plays a lot into your pricing. And also with most companies and with life insurance now, if you're applying for a certain amount of life insurance, you have to have a pretty decent credit score too. So, but anyway, in June, people will see if you're a State Farm customer, a mutual customer, you'll see a credit on your June bill. So even for myself, I did some calculations because in my mind, a penny saved is a penny earned, and I should be getting a credit of about $100 or so, a little over $100 on two cars. So that's one thing we was excited that State Farm did that. In addition to donations that they're making to Red Cross. Now, you asked me about the second question was about the type of policies that people are pulling down from. So there's a couple of things. We got a policy called hospital income. You'll see with COVID, even if you're surviving it, people in the hospital for a matter of days, weeks, trying to fight the disease. And if you had a policy like that, you would be getting at least $250 a day tax free. If you were in ICU, it would be $500 a day. God forbid you were in a hospital for a whole year, you're looking at collecting a check of over $90,000. So that's one policy. Second one is disability insurance. Most people don't think about getting that, but disability is just a paycheck protector. So if you're unable to work due to injury or sickness, your bills still got to be paid. Right now they're making concessions, but it's really only temporary. But outside of COVID, that's something that people need to look at having in case I'm not able to work, my bills can still get paid, right? Disability is huge. Thirdly, the life insurance policy you asked me about. You got three different types that State Farm offers: term, return of premium, and permanent. Term is basically just renting insurance. Term is fine, but it really just covers temporary needs. So after 10, 20, or 30 years, if you decide to keep the policy, the premium will go up. Return of premium is a term policy that we have, but after the term, which I love this policy, 10, 20, or 30 years, if you don't die, you get all of your money you paid dollar for dollar, which is huge. Most companies don't offer that policy. And then the third type of policy, which is my favorite, is the permanent policy. I'll call that one like buying a house because your cash value is growing. That's your living benefit. It's growing in your policy tax free. You're not paying any taxes of the growth of the money, and you can access it immediately for whatever. I didn't need to know what these folks needed the money for. Some of my people, just to be honest, they took the money, they purchased masks, they purchased material to make masks. Now they're selling that, making a profit. Some of my business owners that had the policies, hey, I lost some clients, my money's funny. They were able to pull on the cash value. And guess what? They were able to still keep the life insurance in place, in force, and the cash value is going to grow as if they never touched it. So it's a win-win for you. And when you die, because you will die, right? Two things guaranteed, death and taxes. When they die, their beneficiary will still get something. So, and the other thing, Bishop, I need to mention, usually when you pull the cash value of the policy, you don't have to pay it back. If you died the next day, it's just a deduction from your death benefit. So if you had a life insurance policy with a face value, just to say 150,000, you have a $25,000 loan that you don't pay back. You die tomorrow, your beneficiaries will get 125,000 federally income tax free. So it's a win-win for you as well as your beneficiaries.
So let me ask you this question, now one question again. So has COVID changed the way the company is still writing policies? Are you still writing policies during this time?
That is a good question. We are still writing policies, but I'll tell you some of the changes they're made is because we can't see people face to face. They're either waiving some of the exam requirements, which is huge. Usually, depending on the type of policy and the amount, they will require blood and urine. But most people right now, honestly, are afraid for people to come to their house, a random person, right? So they're waiving some of those requirements. In cases where we used to have to sign things, in person, now the company is saying, hey, we'll take a fax signature and or you can mail the application. We'll take a handwritten signature. So there's some allowances that they're making. So I'm trying to make sure Lottie Dottie everybody get a policy because now it's easier. Honestly, I don't know what the future looks like. There are some companies, Allstate, Prudential, American Family, they put some restrictions on their life insurance policies they're issuing because really, if there's a major pandemic and people are dying, they ain't gonna just give you life insurance like that if they think they're gonna have to pay it out the next day. It's a
You
business,
can
it's
take
insurance.
that out for rent.
So I tell my folks, while you still have the health, while you're still young, go ahead and lock something in because we don't know what tomorrow's gonna bring.
Outstanding. So, we know many of us who watch, TV, if it's sports or CNN or movies, we've heard so much about people because there's such distrust in terms of the stock market and investing, whether it be through the Great Depression. Our grandparents who lived through it didn't trust the banks, so they kept money up under their mattresses or dug a hole in the ground, a doghouse. And, one of my uncles now, still keeps money in the mattress. We're in 2020. And so those who are talking about, of course, we're grateful for you and your experience, but people who look for financial advisors like yourself, and I'm sure your services are offered, but what should a person look for in terms of a financial manager to help them kind of navigate their lives? Because a lot of people have been taken advantage of. And so is there any regulating body? Just want to kind of give those people the empowerment and the knowledge to help them make those decisions.
Sure. So certainly the regulatory body for us is FINRA, but then you also have the broker dealer who is responsible for overseeing the compliance of the advisor as well. I would say that there's a couple of things I tell people to do when they're looking for financial advisors. One is look for their licenses and see what their licenses are and whether or not they're actually held to a fiduciary requirement. One that is held to a best interest versus fiduciary is two different things. And so you want to make sure they are held to a fiduciary standard where they're putting your interests before theirs, and that they're looking at your best interest and not whether or not the product is suitable for you. So that's the first thing. Secondly, all licensed professionals have to have continuing education credit. So ask them what is their continuing education in. So if it's a lot of fluff courses, then I would be concerned. But if they're taking a lot of rigorous courses, and they're keeping up with tax laws, they're keeping up with investment laws, and all of those things, then you should feel a bit more comfortable working with that advisor. Ask them about their fees. Quite frankly, they should be sharing what their fees are up front. If you're going to engage in any type of transaction with them, they need to be asking you, what are your goals, short term and long term? Getting a better understanding of your total financial picture. They should not just start talking about products at the first meeting. The first meeting, they really should be getting to know you, understand your risks, understand your time horizon for these goals. So there's a lot that comes into play when it comes to having I don't want to say competent financial advisor, but for lack of better words for this conversation, I would say one that has integrity and one that is competent.
We've had, probably 20,000 business owners to connect with us the last couple of weeks. Just people just kind of lost right now. And you're a general counsel and you do a whole lot in your capacity in terms of law and business. And I just want to hear what kind of advice, what are some of the things that you're doing during this time as somebody who manages business to kind of stay afloat? Or what are some things that business owners can look for to help them maintain through these uncharted times?
It's a fantastic question, Pastor, and I think this goes directly into why I am such a sponsor of business creation, entity registration. The biggest thing right now today is what the government did with the stimulus package, right? So what happened is you've got EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance. It's a $10,000 grant, right? And I said grant, I didn't say loan. So, in a lot of ways, the government is giving entities this money. If you're not an entity, you can't get it, right? So, the biggest thing you've got a problem with is either you have it or you don't. So, you've got to have a company in order to get it. So, that's the first thing. So, what I've been doing with multiple of our businesses is starting there. Myself and the CFO were on calls day in, day out, figuring out what the actual impact was, what you could sign up for, what you couldn't, on the phone with our accountants, regularly like asking how many companies, which companies, what are the requirements? Is it have to be paid back? Anything. So in terms of being afloat, I think $10,000 today for a lot of businesses is a lifeline, right? So the government is providing these funds, is giving these funds. The application probably takes 5 minutes. I mean, maybe it's 10, but it is not some 75 page, super advanced and oh my God, I don't even know how to like fill this out. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they provided another loan that's based off of your payroll figures. So if you've had employees and you've heard all about people being furloughed, people being, laid off, but the government, again, if you're a company and you've got payroll figures, so if you filed 941s, and which are payroll documents with the Department of Labor and with the IRS, if you filed those and you paid people so that you can expense things, if you've done that, the government is going to give you a certain amount up to what your payroll figures were over a snapshot period. So that'll keep you afloat. That'll allow you to keep some of your personnel on staff, continue to pay them because the government is providing these funds to you. And so everyone is skeptical of all these things, and the government is mean, and the government takes this. This is a moment when the government is trying to help. They are trying to help, but you've got to be set up properly. You've got to have an entity. You've got to have a company. You've got to be structured in a way that you can take advantage of these opportunities. Forget all the things that I could tell you about what I would do in a normal situation. I'm saying right now, there are people and companies who run companies that are getting $20,000, $25,000 per company. Now, yeah, maybe that's not going to keep Apple afloat, but it will keep a small business, which makes up most of the workforce and the economic impact day in and day out from our communities are small businesses. So I say all that to say, you got to have a company though. That's the first and the biggest thing. They don't give them the sole proprietorships. If you've got some business where you're selling garden tools out of your home and out of the garage, they're not going to give it to you, right? Because you didn't set up. There's no way to track you. You just don't get it. So if anybody is deciding, do I really need a company? Is it worth the $100? Would right now, what would people do if their small business could get 15 to 20 to $25,000 for their entities? I was just advising someone today that is buying a business right now. The deal doesn't close until April 30th. And I said, look, if you've already formed a company, check with your accountant to see if you can get the EIDL advance. I don't know what the requirements are if you had to have been in business or if you had to have formed or when you had to form. But just imagine, like, there are people that formed companies January 1st. Maybe they've only been open a month and they're able to get this $10,000 advance. Like, this is the only moment anyone can ever think. Yes, it's unprecedented from a health standpoint, and all the families have been impacted. But if you're here and you're alive and your business can find a way to survive, you can make it to the other side with what the government is providing. That's never happened, right? It happens to GM, it happens to Bank of America and Merrill. But when has it ever happened to the mom and pop who really, really needed it? That's what everybody complains about. And this is the first moment that you can take advantage of it. But you've got to be set up right. So that's my, I wish I could say it stronger and make a plea to people. But if you don't think $100 is worth that in this environment, I don't know what else I could tell you.
Let me ask you this, Brandon. In terms of this whole piece of maintaining employees, do you think it's best to try to hold on to the employees if you can struggle through that, or does it matter whether they're furloughed or not? If you furlough the employees, will you still be eligible? Do you know? Are you sure how that works?
It's a great question. I think. I mean, look, I'm a positive, optimistic person, in general, and to the extent that you can keep employees, yes. Right? Like it keeps the marketplace going. It allows people to feed their families. It allows people to continue to eat. It allows them to go to the supermarket. It allows them to still be able to do things. So I'm a big believer in just a democratic way of doing things, which is, yes, if you can. Now, there are businesses that can't. I mean, if you just cannot stay open, you don't have the dollars, you've got to do the best thing. But I think your people should be the last thing, right? And you've seen it in a lot of ways with these large corporations. The reason they've done it this way, they've decided, like, the CEO won't take a salary. And part of that is him saying, hey, we got to keep some of our good people on, right? Because if you don't keep them, they're going to have to find ways to employ themselves, find ways to do business. But what we did in our business, and what I have been, really like talking to people, is we're not making any employment decisions in terms of furloughs. We are not making any decisions in terms of laying people off right now. And as I've told people, it's a month by month. If this lasts until 2022, you got to make different decisions. But right now, our thought is, hey, we're going to be able to keep our employees. And so we're going to keep operating in that manner, right? Like, and until the circumstances won't allow it, people have to be able to feed their families. People have to be able to do things for their sick family members. People have to be able to keep food on the table. And so in our business, and what I've been advising a ton of businesses in over this period, is just like, I know it's tough. I know people are struggling right now, but we're going to come out of this, right? And I think if you can handle it, if you can maintain it, but again, the $20,000 to $25,000 could maybe keep you afloat or keep your employees on for 2 or 3 months, And so I think personnel is going to still be important. People are going to remember. I use an example in my own house. I mean, we told our nanny that we couldn't use her services right now. And the reason being is because we didn't want anybody else in the home. We did that to our cleaning people. And I only give that example because we told them that we would pay all of them during this period. I'm not in the business to pay people that aren't providing services, but I also knew that my nanny, she was the only person in her household that still had a job. I knew that the people in the cleaning services wouldn't have jobs to continue because people aren't going to have you in your home. And I want them to be able to feed their families. They're important members of our kind of ecosphere, so to speak. So I think talent and people, you got to find ways to keep them. And I'm not saying you can always do it, but to the extent you can, that should be your last resort. That's just my own 2 cents. But I believe in humanity. I believe in the goodness of people, no matter what the circumstances are. So find ways to keep your talent to the extent you can, because it keeps everything going and keeping going, even in the toughest of times.
That's excellent. Natalie, I want to ask you a question, and we're going to wrap up in a moment. Somebody's
Yes.
asking you, what was
Sure.
the last policy that you mentioned? I think it's Dolly asking the question. What was the last policy again that you mentioned?
Yeah, so I mentioned it's the type of policy, a permanent life insurance policy from State Farm. It could be a whole life policy or a limited pay whole life or a universal life, but you want something that's permanent.
Permanent policy. Okay. Sybil, let me ask you this question. So I heard that some of the airline stocks had dropped to less than $10. And I had a
Hmm.
conversation earlier today with somebody about investing in oil and even investing in the Carnival cruise line or whatever. So if somebody says stock with Southwest Airline is $4 a share or $8 a share, what's a good starting place for that person? Should they do it on their own? You know, there's some apps that people could try to invest on their own, which I feel some type of way about. But what will be the first step? What would be your advice to somebody who wants to get into investing now?
So I'll tell you, I'll just be quite honest with you. I don't, unless someone is my client, I don't really sit to talk about individual stocks with them because I'm prohibited from doing that. But when I am dealing with someone who's a novice and who's interested in the market, I really just send them straight to investopedia.com. That is a great learning tool to learn all the terminology, to get a better understanding of how it works. While there's a lot of people who are doing fractional investing, I won't name any of the platforms because I can't endorse them, but there are some platforms out there that are very deep to get into, but you're getting fractions of a particular stock. And in that case, I think that's a great learning tool for people to kind of understand how it works and how to purchase and things of that nature. But as a whole, I can't publicly give advice on particular stocks, but I can say Investopedia is a great tool. I can say that some of these fractional investment platforms is also a great tool to learn on as well because it's very cheap to get in. And so hopefully people aren't putting a lot of money in those platforms.
Okay. So if somebody want to reach out to you, Sybil, and just to consider contracting your services, what could they do?
So if they want to reach out to me, actually, lifeplanfin.com is where they can reach out to me. They can book an appointment for a free consultation. We do a free consultation for that first conversation, and then we decide whether or not there should be a relationship established. But you will walk away from that first consultation at least with ideas of what your financial position is and what some of your next steps should be, whether you are using any of my products or not. So I'm not biased against trying to give a sale in that educational moment. I'm really just trying to educate the consumer so that they can make better choices for themselves and their households.
Drill down. I'll ask you one more question, and I'm not going to worry you anymore, Sybil. Sometimes when people are buying houses or buying cars or whatever, you have certain people who they want to go to the Rolls Royce lot or the BMW lot, and that's not the lot they should be at.
Right.
Sometimes even when you're buying a home, they want you to get a pre-qualification letter. So what I want you to answer is, what are some basic things you feel that a person needs to have before they consider talking about buying investments? We heard about insurance, but before a person can think about really buying stocks, right? What would you
Right.
give us a rubric to say you ought to at least be here in your life before you attempt to come to that level? Because I don't want to waste your time or waste people's time. Give them something to kind of work toward.
So I'll give you a couple of things. So firstly, when it comes to your individual household, your personal savings, you should have emergency savings. The rule used to be 3 to 6 months, 3 months for a married couple, 6 months for an individual. Now I would argue that it really should be 6 to 12 months. 6 for a couple, 12 months for an individual, because the job rehiring cycles are so long. We learned this in the housing crisis. We learned this after 9/11. We're going to see that again now. So firstly, you need to have an emergency savings. And if you don't have that 3, 6, or 12 months, I would say the first thing you need to have is at least $500 saved. There's a study that says if you have $500 saved, that would take care of just about any emergency, whether that's to repair a refrigerator or a car. Okay, then we move from there and we talk about what your personal household budget should look like. So 50% of your income should cover your needs, and then you have another 20% that would cover your wants, and the 30% to cover your future. And so that is what an individual should look at. If they're already exceeding their needs, or if their wants are exceeding those buckets that I just named, then that's a time to really recalibrate before going into making any other purchases. If it's exceeding that number in the wants bucket, you're already out of whack. You want to keep your debt to income down for a lot of reasons. You want it down because you want debt that's sustainable for yourself. You also want to keep your credit score down. So these are just some key things that an individual need to have in place before really going out into the consumer marketplace for larger purchases like cars or houses.
But right now, you will give people an assessment for free.
Yeah, I do that for free. I mean, I'm going to tell you, I am probably the most consumer-friendly financial advisor that you would meet. 21 of my years at the Fed was around consumer finance and protection, like literally. And so I'm a little different when it comes to my work. I educate people. I'm not a seller. I don't, products are everywhere. That they're a commodity. I'm there to educate them. The people that I run into, the nest egg that they have is the only nest egg they have. If they lose it, they're not going to recover it again. So that's different from some of the higher net worth individuals. I work with first generation college graduates, first generation small business owners, and first generation professionals. They've run into this money, but they don't know what to do with it. And if they get with the wrong person, then everything is out of whack. That pie chart I was speaking of, all bets are off.
Outstanding. Thanks so much for sharing. A wealth of information.
Yeah.
I appreciate you for sharing what you shared. I want to talk to you for a moment, Natalie, in terms of how can somebody reach out to you, and if they want to continue this conversation, how can they how can they contact you?
You can reach me. You can reach me at 678-567-0286, or you can find me at insurewithnat.com. That's INSUREWITHNAT. Everybody calls me Nat, so it's insurewithnat.com, and I'll be able to help you.
Comment. You said everybody who's a State Farm customer should see the bill discounted by June, right?
Mutual, mutual,
Okay.
mutual
All right.
customer.
So I got you. So it's in the fine print, huh? Because I've been with State Farm a long time. So hopefully I'm a
Yep.
mutual customer. Great. Thank you so much. And you, my
You're
wife's brother,
welcome.
Brandon, thank you for being here. I want to talk about, and you can close us out in terms of people who want to start a business. Do you recommend people get a business attorney to help them to get started? If so, how should they go about that? Could they contact you? Do you have recommendations? Just want to give people
Sure.
all the information they can get so we can be empowered. So what do you recommend in terms of starting a business?
Well, I'm probably a bit biased, but I would say absolutely part of it is being serious. Part of it is being, credible to the extent you are trying to start a company. I mean, I know that there's legal Zoom and there's other things, but I'm a believer. So I find something, and that is the first thing that I would say. Yes. The second thing I would say is please consult with an attorney. Please consult with an accountant. There are a lot of, attorneys and accountants that they're not charging sort of upfront fees. You can just sort of ask them questions. I've done it a lot. Like, people will ask me different questions or they need different things, and I provide, advice to them. So what I would say is, one, absolutely consult with someone who has a law degree from an accredited institution. And then two, what I would say is, yes, certainly in this time, part of my give back is to help people, overcome and get beyond this pandemic that we're in. And so I'd be glad to assist people. I think the easiest way to reach me is twofold. One is by email, which is brandlaw1220. That's B as in boy, R as in red, A as in apple, N as in Nancy, LAW, law 1220 @gmail.com. And then the second way, if people want to, reach out to me, they can reach out to my Instagram via DM. They can go bizlaw101 BRW. So that's bizlaw101 BRW. And I've got obviously thoughts, and some of it is different methods, right? So if you are just starting a business and it's like, I just need someone to provide any advice, I may say, I've got a great referral for you. If it's a substantial business and you say, well, I really need somebody, I've got a great idea, you may need to talk about intellectual property. You may need to talk about hiring people, so you've got some HR issues. If it's that, it may be a different referral. But I certainly will try, certainly during this time, because I think people need it. And I'm such a proponent of it, to the extent that I can provide anything in terms of help for folks. I would love to do it. So those are the two ways to reach me. And, again, I am getting back to people regularly right now. And I just think that it's so important for people that look like us, that are in the jobs that we're in, to have competent and necessary expertise from a legal. Obviously, we've got some insurance, and obviously we've got financial advisor, but we need more of that in the world. So to the extent that I can provide and help with that, I certainly will.
Natalie and Sybil, you are incredible people, and it's amazing to speak with people who just make our communities look so good. I thank you for your time, because you got a lot going on, I'm sure, in your own individual homes and businesses, and for you to take time out of your schedules to share with us. And people are just so scared and so much anxiety. So we're just trying to provide some information so we can kind of start thinking outside of the pandemic, because it's going to be over now. I don't think we should waste our time without having a plan. So what you've all shared today has been amazing, and I pray that the people who are watching, who are serious about this and are in a position to utilize your services, that they will take advantage of it. And those who need to grow a little bit more before they make those phone calls, that they'll do what they need to do during this time. So thank you for sharing. You helped us tremendously. And I just pray that God sustains each of you during this time and your businesses, and that you continue to prosper, because you bless us a lot. And I just pray God restores those things to you that you gave to us on today. So thank you so much, Brandon, Natalie, and Sybil. Hey guys, you've been watching Hope TV. Hope you've been inspired. Hope you've been impacted by it. We had some beautiful people on here today who share so much wisdom and insight in such a professional and kind and empowering way. And I want you to know that, hey, that the world still has some good in it. So when you see all the bad news and all the bad things that are happening, think about this session we just had, uplifting and encouraging and empowering, and just to let us know we're gonna make it through this. So be encouraged, be inspired. Those who are watching, those who are still hospitalized, hope you get the hope and the strength you need to make it through it. Things will turn, things will get better. So we gotta log off now, but always remember this: if you'll be good to God, God will be good to you. You've been watching the Hope TV. Thank you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.